Right, good afternoon. Welcome to another Lockdown Live chat. And we're in week 2 of being locked up and locked down and all those kind of fun things. Just start this before I forget about that. All right. Today I'm going to be chatting to another very good photographer by the name of Keith Connelly. Keith is a wildlife photographer and is currently living in Uganda. Pretty sure I'm correct on that, but we'll chat about that in a bit. Keith has seen some amazing stuff and has done some amazing wildlife photos, and yeah, it's always amazing to see the stuff that he puts out and shares. And I'm pretty sure that what he shares is not even a tenth of what he's got in his portfolio. So I think it's going to be an interesting chat. Just going to be fun, like always what we do with the other ones. So yeah, right, let's see if we can get Keith to come on here and grace us with his presence. Also, before I forget, Keith is a Sigma ambassador, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that with all the really cool Sigma lenses that he uses. Right. Guys, please don't forget to ask questions. That's what we're here for. We're here just to chat, have fun, and make connections with new people. If you guys got any questions about anything, please ask and we will answer them as good as we can. All right, Keith should be on in a second. Right, did you guys watch last night's video I did? I did a live demo of shooting the full moon. I would like to do more of these kind of things. So if you guys want to see anything, you must let us know, and I'll make a plan for it. See what we can do. We've got another week and a half, yeah, another week left of being stuck indoors. So throw me with some ideas and let's set it up and see what we can do. All right, here we go. Good. Can't hear you. I can see you. I can see you. I can't hear you. No sound. No sound. No sound. No sound. Is your audio? There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
There we're back. You like my background? I'm just chilling here in the Bahamas.
That's what I was laughing at. Let's see what I've got here as well in mine.
I thought maybe a Serengeti one would be lekker, but they don't have one.
Virtual background. It's Let's see if this works. I've got the Northern
Hey,
Light.
you got the Northern Lights. Hectic. Look at that. That's magnificent.
It creates this weird thing. Looking at my glasses.
But yeah, it's also got the same. So I don't know how to turn it off though.
Yeah, just click back on it. It's here by your video, a little arrow there.
Video
You
setting. Choose
there you
virtual background. None.
Just there we go.
There we go. Back. Okay. Yeah. Winning, how's it?
Good, man. Good. Are you keeping yourself busy?
Mainly sleeping, some eating. Yeah, YouTube.
Yeah.
Walking around the garden, playing with dogs. Yeah.
You guys are in Uganda at the moment.
Yeah, I'm in Kampala. At the moment, we're pretty much on a solid lockdown. We have been for maybe 10 days, 14 days, something like that. So we can't really go out. So we pretty much in our house. Luckily, we've got a nice little garden, so we can walk around the garden. Dogs can have a jaw. We just hanging out, man. So yeah, things are chilled up here, though. We can get what we need, and cases are low, and they seem to be handling it admirably well. So yeah, I'm quite happy actually.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I joked to my neighbor the other day because if you walk around our garden, just follow the path of the lawns and all the way around the back, and you get back to the front. It's about 160 meters. So a couple of laps of those, you get to 3 kilometers quite quickly. And I said to my neighbor, well, at the end of the lockdown, it's going to look like when you get those border collies that run up and down the fence. They create like
it's going to be like a hippo track coming out of the water every day. Just like my wife does the same. She runs around the garden every day. So I can hear her running while I'm doing nothing and getting fat.
Yeah, but she's
going to wear a track through there.
Yeah, she's quite a prolific runner as well. So she's done a couple. So it must be bad for her.
Yeah, but no, we're managing. How is everything in the Cape there?
It's okay. I think with a lot of people, there's not they don't see how bad the situation could be if they don't comply with the rules. So the government say that the lockdown is going to end next week, Thursday. If it does, we will be very lucky. But when it does end, I think the restrictions on movements and things like restaurants and those things are still going to be very, very strict. So
yeah, you have to think that common sense has to prevail, man.
Yeah, but also it's just like a stupid little thing is we ran out of printer ink, and we need to send in some forms to the medical insurance and all sorts of stuff for when Karen had when Talia was born a month ago. Now we can't print anything, we can't get any ink. So how long is this going to be before we get ink and send the stuff in, and they say, well, you took too long and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's affecting everyone on all kinds of levels. We didn't ever think we'd be here. Here in Uganda, we can't even leave. You need to, like, if you had a medical emergency, you can't drive your car. They're not allowing any private cars on the road. So, there's good and there's bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's really good how they're handling everything. The lockdown is very, very strict. So I see everyone complaining in South Africa about not walking their dogs or not running in the streets. But you know what? Like, I'm willing to sacrifice that to have some freedom in a month or two. So, but if we have a medical emergency, you can't climb in your car and go to the hospital. You have to call an ambulance. So there's different ways of approaching it. But I'm really happy with the way they're doing it.
How do you get food and stuff?
In East Africa, they have what's called bodas, the motorcycle taxis that are everywhere. So they've stopped all public transport. There's curfew, but what's allowable is deliveries, and everything gets delivered on a motorcycle taxi. So, the network's very, very organized. We can get whatever we need. Anything you need, you get food delivered. But they've closed everything. The only thing that's available is food supply.
That's insane. Uganda is the third world country, and we can't even do something like that here.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I've talked with so many clients in the US, and freedom has so many advantages. But in a situation like this, sometimes our natural inbuilt constitutional freedom sometimes hinders us in the prevention of these viruses. For us. That it's not even an option. When they say close down, they close down, and the results are clear. I mean, the way Uganda has handled this pandemic is really admirable. They've quarantined, they stopped. I was on a trip actually with clients that had come out from France, and halfway through the trip, beginning of March, they stopped all travel. They said, you can come, but then you're going to be in quarantine at your own costs for 2 weeks. So everyone who arrived in this country after March had to be quarantined for 14 days. And then they stopped travel. So they closed the borders already middle of March. And they had everyone quarantined. So anyone who came into the country, if you came from certain countries, you were in quarantine. After those countries started to test positive, they went and found everybody that came back from the UAE, threw them in quarantine. So, you know, they've really done a magnificent job of managing things. So yeah, we're in a good spot. Well,
that's really good to hear. I wish they will do it here, because I think up in Africa they don't take as much shit as what we do down here. So if you step out
they do not.
The line, you get blitzed into the Sambok and you step right back in. But over here, it doesn't happen.
You know, I laugh at all of the push-ups and the star jumps they're making people do in South Africa. They're just murray, mate. and that's if you're walking during the day. If you're walking at curfew, you'd be lucky to get a shambok.
Well, it's crazy. It's crazy. Right. So, okay, let's talk about more positive things. So,
indeed.
Apart from the Corona thing, how's the photography business going at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously things are at a standstill here. Tourism's at a standstill everywhere. But you know, it's been nice to get out. Uganda is an incredibly beautiful country. Kampala is like is chaos. It's like what you would imagine a big African city to be. But once you get out of Kampala, Uganda is an amazingly beautiful place. So I've been on back-to-back trips from January into February, into March. And yeah, it's just fantastic to be able to get out. You know, the Chimps and Gorillas are great, but other things are also very, very nice here in Uganda. So yeah, it's great.
So for the people, okay, but Uganda is well known for the Chimps and the Gorillas. And I presume most people are coming there to go and see that. What else is there that people go and see that they don't know about?
Well, there's two different things. Firstly, if we're going to look at things from a photographic point of view solely, then the Chimps and Gorillas are where it's at with Uganda. You know, it really offers, especially the chimpanzees, it really offers some fantastic photo opportunities. From a traditional safari or a landscape perspective, Uganda is still a good 20 years behind. You know, it doesn't offer the same sort of safari experience that you might experience in Botswana or whatever. But what I will say is the national parks here are so incredibly beautiful, and the potential is massive, massive, massive. It really has a massive potential, but they're still a little bit behind the curve with regard to offering that photographic experience.
Okay, so, but I've never heard of anybody that has traveled to Uganda to go to one of the national parks, like what they would go and get you, anything like that. Is there tourists coming in to those places, or is it just protected areas?
100%. You know, they've got quite a few national parks, and Murchison Falls is the biggest one. They have Queen Elizabeth National Park, which they have the tree climbing lines up in Ashasha, that's on the border with the Congo. And then there's my favorite national park in Uganda, which is Kidepo National Park, which is in the northeast, bordering onto Kenya and South Sudan. It's one of the most least visited parks in Africa. And if I had to describe it to you, it's like a combination of the northern Serengeti, the Drakensberg, and the Timbavati. It's incredibly beautiful. You know, last year I spent a lot of time doing solo missions up there. You know, tourism is not quite, you know, photographically it's challenging. So I can't really bring clients there on a purely photographic standpoint, but to enjoy from a naturalist standpoint is amazing. I've sat and watched a herd of 6,000 buffalo in front of me. 6,000.
Yeah, but why is it so challenging to get photographic clients in there?
You know, from a photography point of view, you want access to photographic opportunities, and that comes with the ability to off-road, the ability to have habituated large populations of predators, predator management programs. You know, if you look at the Sabi Sands, for example, 40 or 50 years ago, it wasn't what the Sabi Sands is today. You know, it's taken that amount of time and that amount of influx of tourism and a management plan to bolster predator numbers and to manage those predator numbers and to offer habituated experiences where the animals are incredibly used to people, the numbers are up, you can off-road, you can do all of those sorts of things. That isn't present in Uganda. You know, you've got very limited road networks. The distances between roads are quite vast. You have a limited predator number because there isn't predator management programs. But the potential is just incredible. But it'll take a good 20 years.
If you say about the predator management, is there too many or is it too little? Or
too little? Yeah, too little. You know, Uganda is a very populous place. It's 44 million odd people in Uganda, and the national parks are very centric. They're small national parks, you know, so the pressure from the outside has reduced those numbers, you know. So, and there hasn't been since, you know, there's been a lot of civil wars in Uganda, 70s and 80s, and coming into the 90s. The civil wars were very present. And when you have civil wars in a country, wildlife suffers greatly. So they haven't necessarily recovered from that. So in the years of stability, which has now been subsequent, the national parks have started to gain more and more tourism and more development, more lodges coming in. So over time, that'll happen. But the predator numbers have suffered as a result. So, you know, lion numbers, leopard numbers, cheetah you can only find in Kidepo in very, very small numbers. So these things will happen over time.
Yeah, but those are the kind of stuff that people would normally want to go and see. So if you speak to somebody that went to Kruger, did you see a lion or did you see a leopard? They're not worried if you saw magnificent kudus or magnificent buffaloes and elephants. They want to see, did you see predators? That's a big thing.
Yeah, you know, like I'm in a unique position because I do both types of tours. You know, I'm doing naturalist tours as well as photographic tours. Now, I can't bring photographers who have experienced Botswana and the Mara and the Serengeti and the Sabi Sands to Uganda with the same expectations. It's just not realistic. But if you a naturalist tourist that is looking for just a wilderness experience, then there's some of those on offer in Uganda. But yeah, it's been an interesting 2 years. I've been here for almost 2 years, 2 years in June. And yeah, I'm moving on to Tanzania, and well, hopefully moving on to Tanzania in the end of June. We're moving to Dar es Salaam.
So you're relocating to there again?
Yeah, we're relocating to Dar es Salaam in June. Yeah.
Okay. Is that because Megan's contract is only 2 years in a specific place?
Correct, but we just chose, you know, to move on. Kampala is an interesting place to live, but it's not somewhere that I would choose to live long term.
Okay.
And Tanzania is an exciting option. So, you know, we'll be on the coast, and we'll have easy access to places like Sulu and Ruha, and you know, lots of other. You know, Tanzania has got such a huge amount to offer for me that it's a very, very exciting option. So yeah, end of June, hopefully we're going to drive across there and we'll relocate. Oh,
fantastic. Yeah, I see in the comments here, we've got old Mr. Averley and Warren Fleming.
Oh,
how's it?
Vagabonds Row there.
Yeah, some good guys. And Mark Sampson is on there as well. Yeah, so
yeah. I bumped into Andrew end of last year in Chobe. He's seems to be doing very, very well. Full of life as always.
Yeah, I had a chat to Andrew yesterday, and this whole thing has hit him hard with his guests that were supposed to come over and everything. I presume exactly the same with you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's absolutely no tourism going on, and we can't expect it to go on. So, you know, I feel like as individual operators like Andrew does and myself and a few other guys, it's a little bit easier because we don't have these overheads. You know, I really feel for the bigger guys who have overheads and have massive monthly expenses because income has just stopped, you know.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. Now, in talking about those wild camps, there was an, and we've got Gareth Fisher on here as well.
Hey, Gareth.
There was a program, and the guy that presented it was Ben Fogel, and he went to a couple that lives in Ruwa National Park. They've got like a wilderness camp there with tents and everything, and it looks idyllic. But also, is there any way that you could set up like a permanent kind of place like that in these kind of places in Africa, or do you need?
Yeah, you know, I looked at a lot of different options. In fact, I was almost going to start up with a mobile safari in Kidepo and Murchison National Park. We had everything lined up to go. But at the end, and I'm very fortunate that we didn't do it, because all of this unfolded exactly at the time we were going to launch this whole thing and carry on. So I'm glad we didn't, but the potential is always there. And, you know, places like Sulu and Ruha, they're very, very untouched with regard to photo tourism. Potential is there. They're huge places, and there's always potential for more of that sort of thing. So yeah, it's something I'll definitely look at doing in the future.
But places like that, they're not fenced. So I might be completely wrong. So the natives living on the edges of those parks, they can move in and out of the park as they please. There's no fence in between.
Theoretically, they can move in and out of the parks as they please, but generally they don't. What you find is there's a small crossover in most of these East African parks where the villages maybe encroach a little bit on the national park and start to use the grazing, for example, in the national park. But generally, that's not the case. It does happen. And that's one of the biggest issues with human-wildlife conflict in East Africa is that the populations that live on the boundaries and the outskirts of these national parks suffer greatly from wild animals coming and tearing down their crops. You know, it's a big issue with elephants, for example. And there's lots of projects like the Beehive project to stop elephants coming in. There's lots of funding. There's lots of different fencing operations that also happen because, you know, whenever you're talking about these situations, you have to take into consideration the people that live on the outskirts of these parks. So yeah, but they're vast. I mean, Sulu is 1 and 2 with the Central Kalahari for the biggest national parks in the world. I mean, it's like 350,000 square kilometers. It's massive, you know.
It's insane. It's bigger than what Kruger is, or is Kruger still bigger?
Much bigger than Kruger, yeah.
Oh,
Kruger,
okay.
if you look at hectareage, the national park of Kruger is only about 1.82 million hectares. Sulu is upwards of 5-6 million, just the Sulu. So yeah, Sulu is massive.
Sure.
And it's split. You know, there's different areas to Sulu. There's tourism areas, there's hunting areas, there's all kinds of things going on, but it's not commercialized like Kruger is, for example.
Yes, I see Andrew commented here, from a birding point of view, you should say Murchison Falls and the swamps would be a good destination for some photography. I'll
say that Uganda is the premier destination for birding in Africa, and it absolutely, without doubt, a premier destination. There's over 1,000 species of birds there, and that in itself is remarkable. What you have is an ecotone between east-west. So you have the Albertine rift in the west. So you have those Central African and West African species. You have forest species. You have savanna species. You have wetland species. It is astronomical how good the birding is. I can, just in my neighborhood, I probably got a bird list of 250 birds. So swamps, you know, hands down the best place in the world to see shoebull, to photograph shoebull is very, very good in Mbamba Bay, which is only about 70 kilometers away from me. I do that fairly often. It's a guarantee to see shoebull. If you go to Murchison Falls and Queen Elizabeth, which is, in my opinion, even better because you're right on the edge of that Albertine Rift. So you're getting the most incredible speciation in these areas. Recently, I had a trip we did a fairly extensive 2-week trip, and we were getting species like the green-breasted pitta in Chibali National Forest. I mean, just birds that you could never get anywhere.
Have you got pictures of that on hand that you could maybe pull up on your screen?
Not on hand.
Those are the kind you never post. We don't see that stuff.
Yeah. No, it is. You know me. I'm a mammal guy, and shooting birds is for the birds. You know, I don't have that level of patience like Averly. You know, that can shoot these birds ad nauseum. But if you're a bird photographer, Uganda is pretty fantastic, and there's a lot of potential for you know, developing that. You know, creating hides, bird hides, that sort of thing, because it would be phenomenal.
What's and how's the government or the national parks inclined for somebody that wants to start an operation? Are they supportive? Are there a lot of red tape?
Challenging. I'd say that it is challenging. The government has it's called the Ugandan Wildlife Authority. So they pretty much control all of the national parks. So in places like Rwanda, for example, the government has been very open to concessionaires coming in, the likes of Wilderness Safaris and Singita that run camps in Akagera and in Volcanoes National Park. So they're open to having concessions, for example. And that would make a huge difference in Uganda. I think it will happen, but it's going to take a couple of years. It's still quite challenging for operators to come in and to work in that framework. You're not going to walk in and be able to open a camp or start to talk about hides in national parks. But at some stage, I expect it to happen. And when that does happen, yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, but you're lucky you're in there. You've probably got some good connections built up already to have access to these kind of things should they become more lenient.
Yeah, absolutely. I've developed some really, really good contacts here, and I have everywhere that I operate, I use ground handlers. So I have a Ugandan tour operator that I use, a Tanzanian, a Kenyan, a Botswanan, a Namibian. So in each place, the local operators that I've picked and normally had interactions with prior, and they've started their own companies. They're normally small companies, guys that are starting to try and do their own thing and develop their own business. So I like in Botswana, for example, I met a guy way back in the late 2008, 2009, who was working at a lodge as a guide, and he was at the time starting to move into his own mobile business. So when he took that jump, I then supported him. So he's the guy I use for my mobile safaris in Botswana. And it's something that I quite enjoy doing, is to allow these local operators to build their own businesses and to learn a little bit more about what photographers want as well. That's not a simple thing. As wildlife photographers and bird photographers, we're very demanding. And so the operators need to cater towards that. And it's not a simple thing to do. So over years, developing that and seeing how guys improve their service and their offering, it's been cool.
Yeah, but it's also, you can't book 10 photographers on a trip with 10 people that's there for sightseeing, because the sightseeing want to move on as quick as possible, and the photography guys want to sit at a waterhole for the whole day. And
no, it can't happen. Small numbers are always better. You can't have 6 people on a vehicle for a photography trip. If you have 6 people, you have to have 2 vehicles. You have to have shooting on either side. It gets more complex. The more people that you have, the more different requests and different viewpoints, and people want to shoot different things from different angles. They have a different idea on how they want to shoot. So small numbers are always better. And you have to have photo-centric trips and naturalist-centric trips. You can't combine the two. Okay.
Tell me quickly a little bit about your safari butler. I see you've got the shirt on, and I know the Facebook page and everything. What is that? Can you tell us a little bit?
It's an online booking platform. So, from my side of things, I have my client base that I run my photographic trips through, and then I have my client base for my naturalist-based safaris. And Safari Butler just offers the year's worth of exploration throughout sub-Saharan Africa to say, if you're looking to go to Kenya or you're looking to go to Tanzania, this is the itinerary that I would recommend. These are the operators that I hands down have no issue with. I've worked with companies that I absolutely have full confidence in, and I know if I send people there, if people book there, they're gonna have the time of their lives, whether it's from a photographic standpoint or just a plain naturalist safari standpoint. These things are guaranteed. If a person new to safaris or new to photographic safaris goes online, it's like the sea of information, and they don't necessarily know which way to book. So my goal is to try and condense that down and to say, look, if you're looking at this sort of budget, these are the people to go with. If you're looking at that budget, these are the operators to go with. Here's the package to go with it, and that's how it works.
And you make those connections between you get the email coming in from John Maguire in the UK that wants to come to Africa, and then you pass that on to the people, or do they contact?
Yeah, we're a booking agent. So John Maguire might email me and say he's looking to go to come to Uganda for 12 nights or 14 nights, and he wants to see a shoe bull, he wants to see chimps and gorillas, and he also wants some sort of like wilderness experience. Then I can say, cool, this is what you need to do, and cut through all of the white noise in the online sphere and say, this is the package that's going to give you the best results. And you're not going to be disappointed with accommodations. You're not going to be disappointed with your expectations from a photographic point of view or from a naturalist point of view. Many countries in Africa suffer from, expectations. So Uganda is no different, neither is Tanzania or Kenya. You might be coming and expecting a certain amount of comfort for what you're paying for, and you might not get that because you don't know what you're booking. Having done this for years, I can say 100% sure that if I send you to that lodge or that camp, that you're going to get good service, decent food, a clean bed, good photographic opportunities, and most importantly, good guides that can deliver on an expectation.
Okay, just correct me if I'm wrong. You were a nature guide by trade, if you want to call it like that.
Correct. Yeah. My background is as a guide in South Africa, so I worked all over South Africa in various lodges. It's actually where I met Andrew. I met Andrew in the Eastern Cape. Yeah. I was working with Brendan Jennings down in Kariga, and okay. Brendan and Andrew were friends, so that's where I know Andrew from. So yeah, I worked all over South Africa as a guide, and then at some points around 2014, 2013, I started to move into my own private guiding style photographic business. Yeah.
But were you always a photographer, or was it just something that came with the job and grew from there?
For me, it's best to start from a guiding base. If you're going to say you're going to be a private guide, you want to start with a good guiding base. I was always interested in photography, but generally I was just a happy snapper and taking memory shots and all the rest of it. But I was very fortunate to work with guys like Brendan in the Eastern Cape, who were able to put me down a path and teach me a huge amount about not only photography, but then post-production and photographic guiding. So I was in a very, very unique situation. You know, there's lots of areas and lots of lodges that have specialist guides like Brendan. There's another guy, Jacques, in Kariga, and then Chad in Motswari. And so I was very fortunate. And then from that point onwards, I started to take photography very seriously, and that became a focus. And that combined with my previous guiding sort of led me down that path.
And so what you're shooting with now? I know that you're a Sigma ambassador, but tell me about what's in your camera bag at the moment. Yeah, so
I shoot Canon. I shoot Canon the 1DX Mark II, and then I've got all of the Sigma lenses. I'm fortunate to have the flagship 500 f4 is pretty much mainly what I shoot with. So that one, and then the 120-300 2.8 Sport. Between those two lenses, it gives me a wide range of coverage of wildlife stuff. I have some wide angle. I've got the 20mm 1.4. When I just decide to stick my toe into the landscape, which I don't do very well. But yeah.
In the sea?
What's that?
If you don't drop your gear in the sea?
Yeah. I would do something like that. So I try and avoid it. The only reason I like landscape photography is a departure from wildlife. You know, wildlife is frenetic, you know. You're always looking for the shot, looking for the angle, trying to get the sun in the right place, trying to get the subject in the right place with the right background. It's chaotic. Landscape photography, just chill and sit and drink a gin and tonic. I can check while you dig it.
Yeah, it is. If you've got all the stuff with you.
Yeah, and all of the knowledge and all of the patience and spirit levels and blah, 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 as our friend Hochart would do. But no, I don't take it to that level. I just sip a gin and tonic and take a few frames.
Yeah, it's if you make the time to get to the right places, then you know when you get there, you're going to have time to set up and all these things. I always say that you can't shoot any nighttime photos without having some beverage in your hands, because you're out.
Conducive to creativity for me.
Yeah, it is.
But sometimes too much creativity.
It's quiet. You've got your shutter going for an hour to shoot the star trail. So what do? Especially if you're alone, then it's boring. So if you're in a group of people, you can still stand around and chat a little bit and all that. But if you've got something to keep your hands balanced, it's cool.
Yeah, it's important for balance is essential. I do quite a bit of Namibia stuff, but I don't necessarily take it very seriously. Most of my clients are not landscape photographers, they're wildlife photographers. So if I can help them with a little bit of an introduction to shots, but I'm no means a landscape photographic guide. I'm the furthest thing from that in actual fact.
Yeah, well, you've got a couple of nice shots in your portfolio.
Yeah, even a broke clock is right twice a day. Eh?
Yeah, exactly. And Andrew asked, do you feel 100-400 focal length lens will work for the shoebill and birding trip?
Yeah, I think 100-400 is good. I think for birding, and especially in Uganda where you don't have the hide options, you know, longer lenses are actually better. So 600 or 500 primes are the way to go for me. But if you're coming to Uganda and you only have a 100-400, it's a good balance. It's a nice variable. For me, it's probably the best range for wildlife photography. It's easy to carry around. It's generally fast enough, you know, with the modern cameras, with the ISO abilities, you don't have a problem at 5.6. Most people, I think, it's the ideal lens. So I would say probably ideal lenses are like the new generation of Sigmas, the 6600 or the Tamarons. Those sorts of scale things are fantastic for bird because it gives you that length that you need.
Yeah, I've got a 150-600 contemporary lens, and it's a great lens. Well, on my Canon 7D Mark II, it was horrible, but on my Canon EOS R, it's fantastic again. So
you need the ISO, man. You need that full frame ISO ability. Otherwise, it's always a struggle.
7D Mark II is just a horrible camera to work with. I hardly ever got really good results from it, and I was very happy with. With the EOS R, I put a lens on and it works. I've got no issues.
I've got to say, I'm very excited about this this R series, you know, and I'm going to dive into that pool next. I've run out of my backup cameras now, seen better days, and I've been waiting for these specs to improve and improve and improve. And I think this R5 that's coming out, it looks pretty cool. Huh?
Yeah, no, that's going to be a monster. I think and especially if all the specs are true, it will be a fantastic wildlife camera and video. Yeah. You don't do a lot of video while you're in the field.
I do, but I need to do more with it. I actually really enjoy doing video. So I bought myself one of those like big gimbal things a while ago. So you know, I can put my 1DX on the gimbal because I've got what's it called, the no, I forget the name of it. It's not the Ronin, it's the Moza Air.
Oh yeah, they're good gimbals.
I can use the big camera, but it's impractical. So that's why I'm very, very keen on moving to this mirrorless system now. Now that I think it's caught up to a certain extent, it allows great video, great resolution on stills, and lens adaptability. I think we are now there. We're at that stage now where we can start throwing our nice lenses on there, and I think the results are going to be good. So yeah, I'm ready to roll with that.
Yeah, no, that's I think once you're used to the electronic viewfinder, you can't shoot with the DSLR anymore. It literally feels like you're shooting with a dinosaur in your hands. It's
you know what the problem is I've had in the past is and this is always up for debate, but I've had a lot of clients coming out with Sonys, with the mirrorless Sonys, from all the way from A9, but earlier generations. And what, especially with Chimps and Gorillas, for example, you don't have depth of background that you can sort of change and position yourself to get a decent depth of field or choose your backgrounds. When you're in these forests, it's fairly thick, and you deal with the background that you get. And what I was finding with micro 2/3 sensors is the DOF that you're achieving was 50% of what you'd get with a DSLR prime, yes, with a decent wide open aperture. And that was yes, very, very disappointing for a lot of people. So I think...
Yep. But the micro 2/3 lenses, they've got a ×2 crop factor to them.
Yes.
So an f4, and again, Warren is on here. I chatted to Warren about Olympus. He can maybe correct me on this. But if you shoot an f4, you're going to get roughly about the same depth of field as you would get on a full frame sensor at f8.
Yeah, that's correct. That's my understanding of it, and that's my experience with it. And that's why I'm really excited about the potential going forward. I think when we are able to produce backgrounds that we need for wildlife photography, then it's a game changer. Then we can all throw our DSLRs in the bin.
Have you what's the results been with your clients with the Sonys, the full frame cameras?
Yeah, the new generations of Sonys have been really good because the lenses match as well. You know, you get those incredible lenses. They might cost, you might need to remortgage your house to pay for them. But these Sony lenses are fantastic. I haven't had much experience with the Fujis. I believe the Fujis are very, very good. That f2 lens that they've got, I think Etienne Oosthuizen's big on his Fujis, and his results are really, really good. So I think we're getting there, and I think with the quality lenses paired up with the decent sensors and the specs that are coming out, the A9 and some of those lenses. I went to Europe last year for a photo festival, and Sony had a booth there. So it was Sony Switzerland, and they had all of their new that 600 mm beast. That thing paired with an A9, seriously impressive.
Yeah, but that is the cost of a new house, basically. Okay,
it is a new house, especially with 2022 to the rand now. It's a big house.
Warren came back here. He says negative. The depth of field does not double. F4 is more like f5.6 to 6.3. F1.2 is like f2 on the micro 4/3 at least.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, but there is that also. If you shoot at f8, it's not going to be the same as what you're going to get at f8, for instance. Or if you shoot at 5.
But I also think it depends on where you're coming from. If you're like us, for example, that have been shooting long primes on full frame cameras for years, and we're expecting those results. If you jump immediately across to maybe some of those, the previous generation of mirrorless and micro 2/3, it's going to be difficult to manage those expectations. I think in a year's time or 2 years' time, when those two lines start to come closer together, then all of a sudden it makes sense. But it's very difficult coming from 1DX2 and a 600 f4 going to a micro 2/3. But on a hobbyist level, for me, it doesn't really make sense for people to start jumping into these big DSLR cameras. It's going to be much more attractive for them to go into mirrorless and micro 2/3.
Yeah, and I think that's where. Look, I've shot with Olympus cameras. They are fantastic, but they're not the same as the full frame cameras. That was my conclusion anyway. And if I would get one for free one day, the video on those things are freaking awesome.
Incredible. Yeah.
For me, I would buy one of the new Olympus cameras for the video functions more than for the photo functions, to be honest.
I've played a little bit with, Sigma South Africa is the distributor for Olympus. And I did play with that OMD system with that, what's it? I think Warren will correct me on it. It's that 150 lens that gives you 300 yes. 2.8. Yeah. And that was impressive, like really, really impressive. It's a mental thing for me though, is to change that mindset to this tiny little thing in your hands with the capability that's incredible. It's just about that little hurdle of getting around to it. But I was seriously impressed with the OMD system. Yeah,
it is a beautiful system, but I still like the full frame aspect better. That's also why I've never, to be honest, I haven't really shot with a Fuji, so I haven't done anything that I can look at my own photos shot on a Fuji camera. But that crop sensor aspect just doesn't appeal to me, to be honest.
It's a hard thing to get around, and but I think maybe you need to get that new Canon in your hands and see, because that Canon that thing looks like a beast.
Yeah, the EOS R is the one that I've got is a magic camera, and the video coming out of that thing the video quality is very good. It's light, it's durable. I've had it now for just over a year, almost a year and a half, and it's served me really well. The only issue I've got, and I've mentioned this before, and I'm not sure if it's going to affect you that much, but if you're shooting in very low light, very dim conditions, like for me, if I'm at a wedding reception and there's like just fairy lights and candles and stuff, so it's very dim, the video that the camera gives you in your EVF is slower than what your frame rate is. So in the first place,
so
you need to
shooting at 24 frames a second. So you're saying it's slower than that?
Yes, for the light. So if you're shooting at 1/100th of a second with a flash, for instance, you're bouncing off the ceiling, that lights up the dance floor or something, and there's fast action. The EVF, you need to turn down exposure simulation. So now, if you're at 1/100th of a second on exposure simulation, your electronic viewfinder is black. It's dark. You can't see through it.
Oh wow. Okay.
Because the ambient light is lower than what the shutter speed is. So you need to either turn it down to like 1/24th of a second, which won't work in that scenario, or you need to switch it off. So now you switch it off. Now it gives you a feed of what the camera says. It boosts the ISO and drops the frame rate a little bit. So then it becomes very laggy. It's almost like it pulls into it. Then the autofocus battles in that scenario. But that will be, in my mind, on every single mirrorless camera will have the same issues on that.
Yeah, I wonder with this R5 that's coming out, you would imagine that they would have to rectify these issues, because that R5, I mean, it's a pretty high-end handheld video option. You know, with that 8K resolution, there's going to be some serious videographers who are considering that as maybe as a backup to their high def camera or whatever. So you would imagine that they would correct it.
I'm talking in terms of for stills, because because in video you can drop, if you're shooting at 24 frames a second or 30 frames a second, you can drop it down to 1/60th or 1/50th shutter speed, and you still get something natural. But if you're shooting stills and people are dancing and going on, you're going to get a lot of blurred photos. So, and I'm pretty sure in wildlife it will be the same. But when you're in that scenario and you're shooting stills, but your shutter speed is set at like 1/200th of a second, the video feed coming through is too slow. So it's difficult to explain to someone if you don't see it in the actual viewfinder. But as soon as you press the focus button, it drops down, it increases the ISO and it drops down the shutter speed so that you can actually see what you're looking at on the viewfinder. And then that frame rate is too slow for it to accurately focus quick enough.
So you want something under your sync speed for your flash, but it's going to drop it to like 1/10th of a second as opposed to 1/50th of a second. Is that kind of what you mean? Yeah,
it is very difficult to explain it to someone who don't see it. I can't even show you. It's too much light inside here.
Yeah, I get what you're saying though, and I think from with that digital viewfinder, I haven't had much experience with it, and I believe it's something that takes a while to get used to, because I've played with some clients' cameras, and with the Olympus, it took me a while to get my brain around it.
Yeah, if you're shooting in a lot of light or in stuff where your exposure and what you see in the viewfinder is correct, so it's like you're shooting live view on the back of your camera, then it's absolutely magic, because you can see exactly what it's going to be doing. You can see where the flares is going to be you're shooting backlit with the sun. You can see where the flares are going to be on the image, all those kind of things, which is really good.
Immediate.
Yeah,
it's very immediate, so you can adjust quickly to whatever's happening in frame.
But in very low light, if you're going to shoot something where you need to track it or anything like that, you're gonna battle, and it will be on all the mirrorless cameras, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. I think there's a lot of comparison with back when we were all moving from film cameras to digital DSLRs. I feel like we're in that similar sort of space now with mirrorlesses. Even though mirrorless has been around for a while, for high-end users, especially high-end sports and wildlife users, we've been on that fence, and now we're moving slowly towards that stage where, okay, maybe it's an option.
No, it's if you're not going to evolve to mirrorless soon, you'll be left behind, because DSLR is busy dying. Look at the new 1DX Mark III. It's a fantastic camera, but in the DSLR mode, the autofocus performance is still brilliant, but it's limited to what you can get if you're shooting with the mirror locked up.
Yeah.
Because if you're shooting it in live,
I mean, obviously, with the mirror locked up is not something that I would use, or wildlife photographers use that often. So yeah, it's just a matter of getting that full frame DSLR performance, depth of field, having the lens accessibility, and once that's done, then there's not really an argument for going back.
Yeah. No, if you play with the R a little bit, you'll see it is absolutely amazing. But okay, I'm not sure how the 1DX is, if it's got a touch to shoot on the back of the camera on the screen, but the R is like that. So if you've got you're shooting,
it's a similar sort of autofocus system. So on live view you can focus touchscreen, and video you can, and it's smart focusing. So you can select a box, and wherever that box moves, it focuses on live view and on video. On
your 1DX Mark II.
1DX Mark II, yeah.
But is it set up so that if you tap on a subject, it will focus and shoot immediately?
I don't know about the shoot immediately. It's not something that I use. I don't use live view to shoot stills very often. So I'm only using the video feature. And if I'm shooting if I'm in the video function, I can just tap and focus, and I can tap and focus and select a box, and then it will track.
Yes, but if you on the EOS R, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if it's on the 1DX2 or the 1DX Mark III. If you, like, let's say a scenario, you're sitting in a game cruiser with your camera mounted on a gimbal. Often you need to scoot back on the chair, like, to get into to look at the viewfinder. With these things, you can flip out that little screen to the side. And now, right, you've got your line lined up sitting there. You can literally tap on that thing, and tap and shoot will be instant.
Oh, okay. So no, I don't. That's not possible with the 1DX2. No.
Yeah, and that is a really cool thing, because of that little flip out screen. So I can sit upright, I can be comfortable, I can move my camera around to whichever way, and I look at the screen, I just tap and shoot, and it will be instant. Or you can just do the shutter button like you would have normally.
So I'll say this about that is with wildlife photography, accuracy is essential. And one of the things, I don't know how small you can go down, but most wildlife photographers are using single point focus, focal points. Yeah. So you want as small as possible, and that accuracy onto an eyebrow is going to be essential. Now, I don't know how accurate you could be. You can easily, if you've got big fingers or whatever it is, or you're sweaty, you're going to lose a little bit of accuracy doing it that way. For me, I don't have a great deal of experience with it, but it's what I imagine to be the case. So if you're sitting in a game viewer and you're looking at a screen, that line is fairly small in that screen. So to be able to accurately touch on an eyebrow to get that pinpoint focus at 2.8 or f4 or whatever the case is going to be a little bit challenging. So you might encounter some issues there.
I will have to test it, but it tracks small things very well.
Yeah. Look, the focus tracking is amazing. You know, from what I saw, I was playing with it at that photo festival, and it's proper. That eye recognition thing that Sony's got going on, it's like, I don't know what, it's like black magic, that thing.
But the new Canon R5 is going to have the animal tracking and animal eye autofocus also.
I'd be interested to hear what Andrew has to say, you know, the Canon guru Andrew has to say about these things, because, you know, I'm not as technical as Andrew is with regard to that sort of thing. And it's always been poo-pooed a little bit in the wildlife circles, as using the tracking has never been accurate. It's like, you know, it's far easier to manage manually tracking an animal or using it in a DSLR setup. I'll be interested to see how it goes, because it's always been the sort of contentious issue.
Let me give it to you like this. If you've got a lion sitting at 100 meters from you, whatever the story is, with your 600mm lens, and you're shooting with single center point autofocus, because not a lot of the cameras, the outside focus points is okay, but it's not fantastic. So to get it perfect, you need to either single shot, focus, and recompose and get the shots.
Yeah.
But if that's walking, you're pretty much going to have your line in the middle of the shot in most cases, and then afterwards you crop in a little bit to give it a bit of better composition.
Not necessarily. It's something that most wildlife photographers and people that are teaching wildlife photography teach is the ability to move and position and compose with focal points at the same time. So if you have a moving object, you're going to almost say, okay, if the animal is moving right to left, for example, you're going to want to leave space to the left, so you position your focus point on the, say, top right-hand side, depending on how much space you're dealing with, and then track that animal that way. I do understand that it is a complex thing and it does take a little bit of practice, and that's where the tracking will come in 100%. But from an accuracy point of view, there's no beating selecting that eyebrow on a single focus point and then tracking it from there, or doing it another way. What I found from previous autofocus systems is that there's this margin of error, right? So if you're going to select a tracking option, you're going to track the back, or you're going to track the back legs of the animal as opposed to the head. The accuracy wasn't always there. So I'd need to see it. I'd need to see it in action to see how it goes.
I've done shoots with people, and I've had it on the face option, and face and eye autofocus. And if it doesn't see the eye, it will grab the face still. And I can literally just hold my camera still, and the person can move, and I just go click, 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 and I'll shoot out shots, of which I will maybe throw out 2 of them. That wasn't the first.
That's beyond incredible. There's no ways you can replicate that in doing it manually. You know, you're probably looking at 30% throwaway.
Yeah, there's I've got an old Canon 35mm f2 lens, which is absolutely magic. On my Canon 6D, I could hardly ever get that thing to focus on the outside focus points, especially if I'm shooting into the sun, with like backlit kind of stuff at weddings and so on. So on the EOS R, that thing is pin sharp all over the focal plane. It's just
corner to corner. You can.
If I had to focus and recompose, you're shooting with a very shallow f2 depth of field, so it will be f2 here, so now you recompose, now your depth of field is like that, so you missed that hair's breadth. So the image is still usable, but if you look at it on a computer, you can see it's a little bit soft. But with this, none of that at all.
Yeah, I'm seriously excited about jumping into this R5. I think what's the second of the intermediate levels, R7? Huh?
No. There's the EOS R at the moment, then the RP, which is a cheaper version. And then
these ones are coming out, yeah?
Bringing the R5 and the R6. The R6 is going to be like...
So I think that R5 is going to have a decent price tag. I think it's somewhere in the region of $3,800 US from what I've seen.
Yeah.
But that's a beast. So one of those 2, I think is very exciting. I'm really, really keen to get stuck in and see how it goes.
Yeah, I see Warren also commented, he says, also the live view on the screen is great as a magnifier for shooting wildlife. It eliminates the need for binoculars.
Yeah, true. I never ever thought about it that way, but yeah, if you can smash in that 10 times magnification, then you win it. You can pick the birds out from 50 meters. Yeah, I never ever thought about it like that. Yeah.
Okay, right. Let's enough technical stuff. What's the story with the chimpanzees and the gorillas at the moment? Are they worried about them with the coronavirus as well? I know that when you go shoot, you need to wear face mask for normal influenza.
Some places you need face masks. So in Tanzania, for example, they enforce face masks. Some of the reserves in the Congo, they have face masks, but Uganda and Rwanda, you don't need face masks. Now it's completely shut. So all of the primate viewing in East Africa is completely shut, as you would expect. So when you have at-risk population like that, with 98.5% of our DNA, anything we get, they're going to get. So if a family of chimpanzees were exposed, for example, that family is in serious, serious trouble. So the sensibility has been admirable that they've closed these places down. There isn't a primates operation that's operational at the moment. It's just, so the only thing that's happening now is the monitoring. So there's a whole system of monitoring, obviously, for the gorillas and the chimpanzees, where they go out every day and they sit with them the whole day and then leave them in the late afternoon when they start to nest. And then they come back in the morning, they find them again, they follow them around. And that's continuing, but it's continuing with a greater distance. So they're not close. Theoretically, 7 meters was the limit on chimps and gorillas. Sometimes it was closer in more relaxed times. Now they're going to be pushing that out to 15 meters to ensure that. So it's only the people in these populations, the spread of this virus hasn't got to the stage where the people working in these reserves are at risk necessarily. So, and they have protocols in place to protect it, because it's a very, very serious issue. You know, the gorillas were affected by Ebola back in the day. So something like this could be incredibly detrimental to primates, and they're taking very, very good care of it.
And have you had any interesting encounters while you were busy with the chimps and the gorillas, like dangerous?
Gorillas and chimpanzees, you know, they're two very, very different things. They're vastly different experiences. Chimpanzees is like incredibly exciting, very loud, very dynamic. They're moving all the time. What I love about chimpanzees is the politics of them. A chimpanzee does nothing for nothing. So whatever a chimpanzee does, it's for a reason. If it pulls its ear like this, it's doing something. If it's scratching his nuts, something's going on. The interaction between not only the chimpanzees within the group, but also the chimpanzee's reaction to you, how he is interacting with you. When you go into his environment, you become part of his environment, and he acknowledges you in that way. So you can actually see, when you look at their facial expressions, how they're reacting to you and what they're trying to tell you and how their politics is interacting. It's a fascinating, fascinating thing. Gorillas, on the other hand, is a much more passive experience. They're far more relaxed. They're far more docile. They're just chilling. They have their own idiosyncrasies, and it can be exciting in itself. But they're two very, very different experiences. Most of the time, the gorilla experience is very sedate, but sometimes it's not sedate. And I can tell you firsthand, I mean, I've experienced a lot of, what's the word? Acrimonious wildlife experiences where you have negative interactions. And I can tell you outright that a silverback gorilla is a terrifying, terrifying thing when it's pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had some interesting ones where, for example, a group of gorillas that is habituated are generally quite relaxed. They pay you no attention. But what will happen is that the silverback will go and grab a wild female from one of the unhabituated families, and bring it into a habituated troop. And it just causes pandemonium, because then that female is so freaked out about having people around that she's screaming and running. And as a result of that, the silverback gets his back up, because his role is to protect his family. So then you're starting to see these interactions where the chest thumping and the screaming and the mouth gaping starts to come in. And it's an intense experience. But generally, it's a very, very peaceful, very calming and relaxed. It's incredibly intimidating when you have this 220 kilogram silverback, or a group of them, like in Magahinga in Uganda, they've got 3 massive silverbacks, all 220 kilograms. And they walk straight towards you. So you've got to sort of slide out the way, and they'll just walk straight past you. And it's an incredibly, incredibly humbling, intimidating experience.
Yeah, but that thing is as strong as an ox. That thing will rip you apart.
I mean, their hands, their fingers. I mean, you say pork sausage fingers. This is like a boerewors finger, mate. The thing is like, it's massive, and the power that they have, it's incredible. Just the chimpanzees. I mean, chimpanzees are incredibly intimidating in themselves. They're not incredibly big. They're smaller than you think they are. Like, when they're moving, they're smaller. But you look at the physicality of a male chimpanzee, and the male chimpanzees is what you are mainly interacting with. The females tend to be a little bit shyer. They move away. You're not getting the same sort of interaction. The males tend to be more relaxed. They'll walk past you. They'll try and intimidate you. They'll climb. They'll do different things. And the physicality of a male chimpanzee, wow. That's a thing. I mean, the biceps, these things are doing plyometric exercises from the day they're born. You know, they're climbing trees, they're doing whatever. It's an impressive thing.
Yeah, my brother-in-law is the head of ER at Nelspruit Mediclinic. So he's worked with all the animal attacks coming in from Kruger, everything. And it's about 7 years ago, there's a chimp rehabilitation center outside Nelspruit.
Yeah, the Jane Goodall Institute, yeah.
Guy from the States that came in that was attacked by a chimp. And obviously he must have done something to
also,
provoke.
it's a captive situation.
Yeah, but it was 2 or 3 chimps. They dragged him around inside the pen for a couple of times around. They scalped him. They tore off his penis. They really stuffed him up so bad that he was. They tore off his penis.
What?
Yeah.
Jesus, yeah. No, look. Okay, so you can't compare a captive situation. So in a wild situation, they're naturally aggressive, but they're not a threat to you. So you can see them interacting, and what they do all of the time is this thing called a charge display. So depending on what's happening, often the dominant males or the alpha males will perform this sort of charge display where they do the pilo erection, where the hair comes up like this. They stand up, and that's when you see these pecs and these biceps, and then they start to run, and then they'll jump up on the side. They'll do buttress drumming, where they run up on the side of the tree and they do, and it sounds like a bongo drum. It's incredibly loud, and they scream, and they'll pick up sticks and they'll drag the sticks and they'll throw the sticks. But it's a display. It's meant to intimidate, but it's not meant to harm. So there's almost no incidences of violence against tourists in a wild situation, because it's not. The captive situation is incredibly difficult. You don't understand the stresses that those animals are under. The environment is not natural, so it's a very, very different thing. I will say, though, however, that the absolute last thing you ever want to get into a tangle with is a chimpanzee. A male chimpanzee, my God, that thing is terrifying.
Okay, that's cool. Right, any other cool stuff you've got that you can chat about that you've seen while up in Africa, or that you're planning on?
The list is kind of endless, I suppose. There's so much cool stuff to see and do. I think, the list is endless. I mean, I've spent a lot of time seeing some pretty cool places. One of the coolest places for me is, I would say, Zakuma National Park in Chad. It's something so very different to what we used to. When you start in South Africa, you start going to the Kruger National Park, for example, and it offers you a specific type of experience. And then maybe from there you graduate to the national parks. You're going and shooting 15 million leopards in a day in the Sabi Sands, and that's a cool experience in itself. And each experience is different. So going to Botswana is so different to going to the Sabi Sands, or going to Zambia, Lower Zambezi and South Luangwa is different to that in itself. And all of them offer a different experience. And I was very lucky to be able to go and experience Zakuma, because what it's like taking a time capsule 800 years back or more back into Africa, and going into this place where it's just the numbers of not only animals but birds is beyond anything I could ever explain. It's you're talking about hundreds of thousands of things. The quilias, the red-billed quilias, which is the most populous bird in the world, but they gather in such numbers. You're talking like 100 million in March, in the beginning of March, when they all start to congregate and they murmurate. So when I first got there, you camp on a big floodplain. It's about 3 kilometers from the Quilia roost. And I was sitting in my tent, and it's like a waterfall, like a rushing water. And I'd asked, like, where's the rushing water? It doesn't make sense. And what it was is it's the Quilia leaving their roost in the morning and coming back in the evening. So then in the evening, you go to their roost spots, and the trees are just covered in the guano, and just white from all of the uric acid and all of this sort of stuff. So they just come in like a group of 500,000 or 100,000, come in from different directions, and then they join up and they start to murmurate, sunset, purples, colors, craziness, and they murmurate, and then they go down, and then the next group comes. So it's insane. Then you've got northern grey black-crowned cranes, just tens of thousands, pelicans, tens of thousands, just ducks, waterbird, waterfowl, thousands upon thousands upon thousands, and the numbers that you get, I can't even describe to you. Like, it's just insane. So you'll have a floodplain with Lewell's hartebeest. You'll have like 40 Lewell's hartebeest. Then you'll have a herd of 1,000 buffalo of different colors. You know, they're a hybrid subspecies of the buffalo. So you'll have like a red colored forest buffalo and almost like a Cape buffalo standing next to each other. And they're the same subspecies essentially, but thousands of them. And then you've got in the background thousands of these birds happening all at the time. So it's like you took a time capsule back to before us Europeans arrived here in Africa. Like, it's like that. It's wild, wild, wild. So these experiences are out there. They're becoming harder to find, but they're there.
But how easy is it for the general guy on the street to go on one of these?
That's why I suppose that's why it exists. Is, you know, getting there firstly is incredibly expensive and not necessarily comfortable travel. It's not like climbing in your car and driving to Kruger. It's an expense. It's not necessarily comfortable. It's hot. It's 40 degrees every single day. It's humid. It's dusty. It's on the edge of the Sahara. So you're getting like it's not necessarily travel for everybody, but that's why it's there. That's why it exists. So yeah, that's just one example of amazing experiences. You know, there's so many out there.
A question I've got in terms of traveling to these exotic spots and far off places is, what do you do in case of an emergency? Is it just your time, or have you got some sort of way to sort?
No, there's always backup plans. So you have medical evacs available. So it's all, most of these places are fly-in. So if someone was injured, you'd fly them out. So in different areas, you know, like even Namibia is remote. If you're up in Damaraland, you're far from anything. So if something happens, generally I have a sat phone with me all of the time. I always travel with my sat phone. And it has come in handy. I've had one unfortunate car accident that happened. And without the sat phone, I would have been properly stuck. But with a sat phone, you can contact emergency services and get them there. There's always backup plans. We always have medical evac options available to us. So if you do get injured, helicopter or plane, sometimes it's going to take long. That's the reality of the situation. You know, you have to fly a plane out there.
Are those kind of things that you would need to arrange beforehand? So like take out an extra insurance policy that if something is wrong, that you've got somebody can pay for it, kind of thing?
Yeah. That's hugely important. And in fact, now it's almost compulsory. So many lodges won't accept a booking without foreign travelers having a solid additional travel, because most people think that if you pay for a trip on your credit card that you've got travel insurance. That's horribly incorrect. It covers you for just about nothing. You might get some medical extraction, maybe, if you're lucky. But the only real way to do it is, there's a few ways to do it, is to take a short-term travel insurance policy. So you know you're traveling to such and such a place. You cover that trip on a travel policy. There's a lot of different options. Some are better than others. But you pay for it. But you get what you pay for with regard to that insurance. I've seen now with this virus calamity is that I had clients that had to cancel because they had no other option. They were coming out and only had these days to travel, and they couldn't travel. So as a result of that, they had taken the precaution of taking travel insurance. They took that travel insurance and they got every single cent of their money back.
Okay.
Most people don't take that level of travel insurance. And if that happens, you're not going to be covered. The other option, which is the best medical option, is there's different companies that offer policies on a yearly basis. So if you're traveling a lot in remote areas, for example, you can choose to take a policy. They normally cost about $350 a year, but they are the top travel insurance and medical travel insurance companies that exist on the planet. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can have like these EPIRB GPS devices.
Yeah.
Ones where you can text satellites. Garmin has the EPIRB. There's an emergency button on that. I have one on my sat phone. So if I press the emergency button, it sends an email through to this company, for example, and they have travel and military professionals that then realize that this is a significant issue, and they have the means to get to you. They will evac you. You can call them and say, this is what the situation is. If it's emergent, like life-threatening, they will dispatch what they have to dispatch. They have helicopters on standby, but it costs money.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Keith, I think we've coming up onto almost an hour and a half of chatting. Yeah,
Fantastic.
I think we can probably chat for another 2 or 3 hours about these things. It will be, but I don't think anybody will listen anymore to us. Just one thing I want to say to you still today, and probably in many years to come, that your wedding that I shot in Paternoster is probably still the one that ranks as my best wedding experience ever. So
yeah, well, we were glad you could join us for that, because it was an all-time epic. I think I still have a hangover from that. If I look at the photos, I still kind of feel a little bit ill. But yeah, what an epic experience that was. But not only that, your photos that came out of that, I mean, just they were so phenomenal, so phenomenal.
it was an amazing. Well, if you've got awesome people to work with, it just makes the job so much easier.
Yeah, no, it was a great time had by all.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that wedding I shot, if I remember correctly, just over 3,000 photos at the party alone, and we were 28 people.
No, it was a mad time. We enjoyed ourselves, and we suffered the consequences subsequently. But it was such a great time, and the photos, I mean, memories they'll be with us for a lifetime. So yeah,
it was awesome.
Thanks for hanging in there with us.
Oh, no, it was amazing. It was amazing. Right, Keith, thanks for joining us. I think it was really cool. There was some really cool stuff shared. Yeah, if anybody's got any questions, they was just posted, and I'll send them on to you. Or
please do.
Yeah, and I'll put
Awesome.
all your links in where they can find you and Safari Butler and all those kind of things.
Great.
So hopefully, once this thing is over, that we can get back to business.
Exactly, and I hope I wish all the best for you and your wife and kids, and the new one that's probably keeping you up at night. I hope you all stay safe and stay well.
Keeps well, so we are very blessed with her. So
good. Stay safe, and look forward to chatting in the future.
Send my regards to Megan on that side as well.
Will do. Thanks, man.
Right. Cheers, Keith.
Cheers, man.
Right. Thanks, Keith, for joining us. That was really an interesting chat. And like I said, we could have probably gone on for about another 2 or 3 hours if you let us be. I photographed Keith's wedding back in 2015, and it was an absolute blast. Like we said, it was amazing. And if you had one of those as a wedding photographer, it's very hard not to compare other weddings to it. So unfortunately, the new brides, you've got a lot to live up to. Anyway, right. Let's close this off. Thanks, guys. I should have yesterday's chat with Marcel up on the podcast a bit later on. And yeah, see you soon. See you tomorrow.